Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Sliding Scale podcast. Today I have probably one of my oldest friends from the internet, and I'm getting an opportunity to talk to her in real life. Well, not really in real life, but this is as close as we get. So this is Dr. Aakanksha, and she is more commonly known as pediatrician Bustle Boone on the internet, and she has been talking about toxicity and all of the other fun things that come with being a healthcare worker in India or anywhere else. And on top of being socially active on social media and other platforms, she has done her MD pediatrics, she's done her DNB pediatrics, she's done her MRCPCH, and now she is working as a pediatric fellow in the UK. So that's what we're going to be focusing on predominantly today. So welcome, Dr. Aakanksha, to the show.
Thank you.
And so tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, firstly, I'd like to correct you a little bit. I have not completed my exams yet. I am due to appear for the clinical exam in June. I've just
Okay.
written the theory exams and I got an opportunity to start working in the UK, fortunately, before I completed my exams. So I came through the
Oh,
fellowship
okay.
route,
Okay.
where the employer sponsored my visa and my GMC.
Oh,
So you've already told most of it, but yeah, not many people know that I've actually trained from Delhi, and I refrain from saying
okay.
that, considering how politically inaccurate I could sound with all my reels. But yeah, I
Yeah.
have trained in Delhi, and I completed my MD from Delhi as well. And
Okay.
following that, I pursued DNB. Actually, my interest in MRCPCH was something that I sort of grabbed when I was in my training. So it was very late that I actually understood that I could move to the UK after MD. And I always wanted to do a sort of like, even before I was aware, I wanted to do sort of fellowship here and everything. But during during my MD years, I had a senior who was pursuing these exams. So that's how I came to know about
Okay.
it. And then I started writing the exams after my MD. Basically, I wrote the DNB, and then alongside I was writing the MRCPCH exams as well. And I was continuing to do my senior residency in Delhi while I was writing these exams.
Okay. So, I mean, that's awesome that, before you had the chance to even finish
Yeah.
your exams, you were able to go there and work. That's awesome. So you moved to the UK having practiced in India for a while. A lot of people, even though they write their MRCP or they write their MRCPCH, they choose to stay in India and just use it as an
Yeah.
additional sort of qualification. But why did you choose to move and work there?
Honestly, when I actually got this opportunity, I had probably decided that I will just write the exam and stay back because it is quite hard to find a job, and it can be quite taxing as well. Like I didn't even try so much. I was just hearing stories, and I thought that like I wouldn't get in. Like I did not think I would get an opportunity before I complete my clinicals. So because the clinical exam in itself, writing that exam in India is it's just I think it's very I don't know what the right word for it. It's very difficult, not because of the logistics part, but because of the examiners, I would say, who are again Indian examiners. So it's a little difficult to crack that exam while you're in India. So that's why I had
Yeah.
thought I'll give it time, and I was in fact about to like I had almost completed my setting up my clinic. I was just about to
Hmm.
start like independent practice when I got this opportunity, and I just took it because I realized that it is much easier to actually come here, practice here for a little bit, and then write the clinical exam here itself because you are
Right.
more sort of predisposed to the system and you know it better. You know what they want. What the
Correct.
MRCPCH exam wants from you is better understood when you're actually practicing in the system.
Right.
And of course, there are no biases. There is a different set of examiners. They might be Asian as well, but the mentality is much different. So that's why I actually decided to just take that opportunity and move. I had not
Mm,
thought of how long I'll stay here for at that point.
mm.
I thought I'll just give it a shot and start working and then take a call based on how I feel.
Great. So I think you have found your stride, and
Yeah.
I'm extremely happy that you have. So for the people that don't know, how long have you been in the UK, Dr. Aakanksha, and how are you finding it so
So
far?
I moved to the UK in February 2023. So it's
Okay.
1 year and 3 months now. And honestly, in the first 3 to 6 months, I was still confused whether I want to stay here because people around they were actually like, I sank into the system quite quickly, and all my colleagues were telling me to just get into training. So that is another aspect that everybody should know about when they're coming here, especially in pediatrics. You have to sort of enter the training pathway and complete your training in about 3 to 4 years' time for you to practice as a consultant in this country. It's important that you have your training years completed. And pediatric training in the UK is 7 years. So suppose like I
Oh,
came at a stage where I was in my like I'd completed my MD and I was in my sort of fourth to fifth year. Like I had 1.5 years of working as a senior resident back home. So I came at a level four of like 7 stages. But then I was not in the training job. I was not in a training job. I was a non-training clinical fellow. So the entry into the training system in the UK in pediatrics happens at ST3 level, which is like your final MD. It used to happen at ST4
right.
level previously, but now because
Mm,
they've cut down the training by 1 year, initially earlier the training was 8 years, now it's 7 years. So the entry is at ST3 level, and you have to complete ST3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 before you can become a consultant. However, if you have some years of practice back home, there are ways to skip a year or two and add that experience while you are in training. So you have
okay.
to basically just display your competencies, and if you find the right sort of supervisors, they are
Mm,
quite like happy to sign off your competencies, and you can skip a year. But I'm yet to
okay.
discover how that works. But I think it's important for people to understand that you have to complete 3 to 4 years of training before you start practicing as consultant in this country. Like you cannot just straight
Yeah.
away
So
come by, and even if you have written your clinical exam, you cannot just straight away
yeah.
come by and become consultant.
Correct, correct. So for medicine also it works kind of similarly where after MD, even if I've finished writing my MRCP, I have
Hmm.
to go into an ST3 post.
Yeah,
And that is if I find a training post. I
yeah,
might not
yeah,
initially. And then depending on what subspecialty I want, I may have to train for 4 years or five
yeah,
years.
yeah.
So for pediatrics, is that how it is? Do you just choose a subspecialty in pediatrics
So in
at the
pediatrics,
ST3, ST4 level?
yeah. So in pediatrics, we have to enter training into general pediatrics at ST3, but in ST4,
Okay.
if somebody is interested in subspecialties, they can just
Hmm.
choose that like of course it is like DM entrance in India. There is quite a high competitive rate for going into
Okay.
subspecialties here as well. It's called the grid
Okay.
training. So somebody who is really keenly interested in subspecialties, they have to work on their resume and get into grid training at ST4 level.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds that sounds complicated and
But
competitive.
um,
So
but having said all of that, I think that the best thing about UK is that it gives you all the leeway, it gives you all the time. There's no rush. Nobody is in a rush in this country. You can take all the time you want. Unlike
mm,
India, where we have that rule, 25 pe naukri and all that, 30 pe chokri and
correct,
whatever.
correct.
There are age cutoffs that are defined in India, which are absolutely inexistent here. I would like to state an example, in fact, which is something which always amazes me. Like I think even where I'm working right now, there is a very old lady. I think she must be 55 years old or something, and she's a student nurse. So she
Oh
took up
wow.
nursing after having, worked like a barista for a certain number of years, and she just took up nursing after COVID because she was like, I'm really interested in helping people. So she's
Mm,
55 and she's a student nurse, and by the time she actually finishes all her nursing and everything and becomes a nurse, she'll be around 60, 62 years old. So there's no age cutoff. you know, just you have all the freedom to do anything at any age in this country, and that is the best thing about being here. There's no judgments about how old you are, what stage of life you are at. Nobody cares.
Yeah, I think just the idea of that is such a culture shock to us because
Yeah,
we are so hardwired to judge people on a whim. Even if we have, no business judging them, even
yeah,
if we have nothing to do with them in any way, shape, or form, we
yeah,
have this mentality of, passing judgments.
yeah,
We may not say it out loud, but I think we're just hardwired to think in that way.
yeah. And I
And it
think there's
takes a
a
long
lot
time
of
to,
pressure. Like I have always been somebody who has not tried to stay away from peer pressure, also because I'm an only child. But you still feel it. You still feel the
yeah,
pressure subconsciously. It's in your head that, I am at a certain age and I have not achieved so many things. And there is always that certain pressure which is lurking around, even if you are trying to stay away from it, it's there. So
yeah,
when you're back home, because
it's that.
even subconsciously people are comparing themselves to everybody else. Like if you see your
Correct.
batchmates getting married at a certain age, you're like, oh, everybody's getting married. I'm the only one stuck here. So it's very like it's a second nature when you're in India.
Definitely. It's that Sharma ji ka beta phenomenon.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's difficult to get away
And
from it.
especially I think for
So,
scholars, like, especially for doctors, it's even more because of that Sharma ji ka beta concept. We are just
yeah,
hardwired and trained to be the best. So
yeah,
I think in every aspect of life, we are looking at a benchmark and trying to attain it.
no, absolutely. And I think, like you said, for doctors, it's so much harder because we are already at a hyper competitive level. Like,
Yeah,
from the
yeah,
day that we started MBBS, we've been pushing and ratifying
yeah,
everything that we
exactly.
can get our hands on. And so
Mm,
when you are already competing with the cream of the crop, it's very difficult to set yourself apart at that
yeah,
level.
yeah,
And we don't, and the other thing is we don't get taught how to deal with not being at the very tip
exactly.
top because
Yeah.
we've been at that level our entire life. So yeah, it's brutal.
Yeah.
Um, so the thing that I wanted to ask you is that, as medical professionals, we don't really get exposed all that much to the outside world. And the real world, and myself included, coming out into the real world was a rude awakening for me because there were so many things that I didn't know. So that being the case, how did you find it in yourself to move to another country? What were the hurdles that you faced?
So, like you said, I actually come from a completely non-medical background. My parents were quite shocked. They did not want me to like pursue MBBS and spend my life studying all sorts of books. But I was
Okay.
quite adamant in becoming a doctor, and then following that, I had no clue how MD works. Honestly, MD entrances, I had no clue how they work. I was just winging it, I would say. And I think during MD, before MD, I didn't even know what USMLE is, what this, PLAB exams are. I had no idea, no clue. And during MD, I understood that it takes a lot of funds for you to actually move to another country. And I was quite happy that I was not aware about anything because I don't think that I had the sort of funds or I was ready to put that sort of pressure on my parents during my MBBS because I was literally like I was learning this profession like a newbie in my family. So I couldn't
Correct.
have, added that pressure to my parents that I want to go to another country now. Also because I'm again an only child and it would have been very hard for them at that point to just send me away. But then during my MD, I understood that I think what really led me to take this step is the sort of toxicity and the work culture that I dealt with during my MD years. I would have probably just let it be if it would not have been for the kind of environment that I faced, the kind of stress that I dealt with, and half of my I shouldn't be saying this out loud, but half of my batch they were suffering from some sort of mental health issues during their MD. And I realized like I come from a very protected family, I would say, because like my parents have literally just brought me up. So I have always been in that safe space for me to really understand these mental health issues. I always used to think they're alien and I'm quite strong for them to hit me. So even when I was facing a sort of a mental health problem, it took me, I think, quite some time to realize that I am not mentally well. And one of my friends told me
Mm,
about it. And that's, in fact, MD years was when I realized that I'm in general an anxious person. I started getting panic attacks when I was in MD, and then I faced this bout of subclinical depression, and that's when I decided that this is not something that I signed this profession for. I cannot spend my life being mentally unwell for something that I love doing. So that's when I decided
correct.
that this is not the kind, like, even if it is more work, or even if it takes me more academics or whatever it takes, like if I have to move, or of course if you have to move to a different country, it takes more hard work personally, professionally, in setting up a new home in a new place. So I was ready to do all of that. The only condition was that I cannot, like, I should be in good mental health. I should be happy, and nothing should affect my mental space. Because I think you can deal
Mm,
with anything that the world has to throw at you if you're in good headspace and if you're at peace with yourself. So that is something that drove me to actually take this step. And I keep telling, even on my live sessions that I'm doing, people are like, they often ask me questions like, why did you decide to move when NHS is, going downhill, they're not paying salaries and everything. I said it depends on what you prioritize. If you prioritize money, then NHS is not the best place to be. I did not prioritize money, and to this date, I don't. So, what I moved to NHS for, I'm getting. I moved to NHS for the peace of mind and for a good work culture. And fortunately, it's much better than back home. So, and with regards to what hurdles I faced, the first hurdle is, again, there's nobody I knew in this country when I came here. It was, and in fact, this was the first time that I moved out of home. So, like I said, I have completed all my training from Delhi itself. I've never stayed out of home. I've always been a day scholar. This is the first time that I moved out of home and to six time zones away straight. So this was, I think, I wouldn't say that it was very hard because I was mentally prepared. My parents were quite encouraging when I actually moved. So, but yeah, it was, I think, for the first 2 weeks of being here, I was on video call with my parents. Throughout the day, I was on video
mm.
call because it is not easy to, move when you're in your third decade of life. And
It's not.
it's just
Yeah.
very difficult to leave that comfort of home and set up a new home here. That is the number one hurdle. But after that, things just, I wouldn't say that I faced any hurdles professionally. I think this country has, so if you're kind to people, this country is kind to you. That is my number one giveaway from what I've learned in the last 1 year. You just have to be kind, and you just have to be not arrogant. That's all. But this country is quite helpful. Even when you're walking on the streets, if you don't know the way, people will stop and help you, leave their bus and help you. So that way, the country is very kind, and it has been very kind to me as well. Of course, when you move to a alien nation, you are scared of so many things. You're scared of like, for somebody who's never stayed out of home, even the smallest of things, like going to the grocery after the sun sets. You're scared going out. What if somebody steals my phone from my pocket while I'm holding those grocery bags? So something as small as that, but then the country grows on you. I think it's people are very helpful here, so it helps when that is the case. And you just learn to get adjusted and adapted. And apart from that, I think the second hurdle which many people will face whenever they move to the UK, you don't get any conveniences here that you get when you're in India.
Mm.
So you have to clean your own shit, literally.
Yeah.
So, like when I moved, I had to deep clean I'm still staying in hospital accommodation. So I had to deep clean my room and, take all sort of measures to properly deep clean it. I couldn't sleep for the first few nights because it was stinking. So all these hurdles are just something that you have to deal with. Like you don't get any conveniences. कभी भी रात को खाना order नहीं कर सकते हो यहाँ पे. Everything shuts
Mm,
down after 8 o'clock. So like Swiggy Zomato नहीं है. Grocery bags खुद से उठा उठा के you have to get them all. So yeah, these are just minute hurdles, but you realize I think you realize raw living when you come to this country.
Oh, you're right. It's like you said, I think moving to a different country in the third decade of your life
Yeah,
by yourself, having been an only child in Delhi your entire life, and moving to a country like that is daunting. I mean, just talking about it is daunting for me, so
yeah.
I can't imagine how it must have been. But I'm very excited that you found your footing that in the year that you've been there. So, you spoke about a lot of things that were difficult for you, but was there anything that made this transition easier for you?
So yeah, like I said, this country, the sort of like when you go out on the street, you see a stranger smiling at you. You know, what is your response? Okay, like in the first few days, I was like, okay, are they laughing at me? Have I done something wrong? And then you just realize that okay, it's a norm here to smile at strangers. It's a norm to say thank yous and sorries when you're passing by. So I think these are the little things that make you feel like you're not alone, that there's somebody around you who's smiling at you. That person doesn't know you, but they're smiling at you, so they're here. If you need something, if you're not able to find your way out, there are people who can help you. So these are the little things about the sort of environment in this country is just it just makes you feel like it's okay. And we know that you're here, and we are here too. So we are there with you. So the sort of kindness that you face here is something which keeps you going. And then, of course, personally talking, I actually met my fiance just a month of being here, and I think that was quite that was something very unexpected, but it kept me in a stead with regards to being homesick and everything. I used to have him, and we used to, because he also moved recently, so we used to both have each other, because it's difficult to make friends, so even at your workplace. But then
Definitely.
gradually you start making friends. You have your seniors, your colleagues who are there at work as well. You start knowing them, they start knowing you. But I think the main two things for me have been the kindness that UK has given me, and having met my fiance in the first month of being here.
Yeah, so first of all, congratulations, moving to a different country and finding love within like
Yeah.
a span of 2 months
Yeah.
is insane. You hit the lottery there, so
Yeah, thank you.
congratulations on that front. Um, but yeah, you're right. I think the purity of little kindness
Yeah.
is something that's lost on us.
Just
It's
small
something
acts
that
of kindness,
we exactly
I mean, it's
exactly.
just, and then you will find somebody like where I stay right now, there is an Afghani grocery. So they watch Bollywood movies
Mm,
and they know Hindi. So you will
mm,
find somebody or another Asian
correct.
group of people who you'll meet them. You'll find Maggie lying in some of the groceries, and, just small things like that.
There's little pockets of home
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that keep you going. That's awesome. Yeah, I think it's a little romanticized the way we talk about it. I'm sure it would have been a little difficult
So
for you,
you're talking to
but
a
yeah,
poet, and I think all the people
right.
who know
Oh
us
my, I forgot
know
to.
that they're
Yeah,
talking to a poet. And I
yeah,
think for me, it's always, I do think that it is about little things, especially when
for
you're
sure,
you're
for sure.
adulting. It is all about little things, because otherwise
Definitely.
I mean, I think back home we are too used to being cold. So whenever
Yeah,
there's a bit of warmth, it's just
yeah.
always welcoming. And especially in like up north, like in the UK, the weather is too cold, so people have to be warm. Otherwise, it'll be very difficult.
You really are a poet. I should have scripted this beforehand.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to keep up with this. But let's talk about some little bit serious stuff. So I think you've been very vocal about the toxicity here in India, and I think every day there's worse news coming out of medical colleges, government colleges, and private colleges. So what was your view on toxicity while you were here, and how did you go about dealing with it when you had to?
So I think the best way to deal with toxicity is to not deal with it and learn from it, not be a propagator of it. And just, I think the best thing that helped me was to just improve my knowledge and, in my head, tell myself that I'm so much better than all these people. And the only way I could tell myself that was by reading, by studying, by absorbing all the knowledge that I could get from standard textbooks. So that's the only way. I mean, if like I've made this mistake when during my initial years of training when you're young. You tend to feel that, you need to call out everybody who's being toxic to you. But I don't think that that is a good thing to do, especially in a work culture like we have back home. It's not the best thing to do because people can try to ruin your life like you don't know. Like, I think as trainees we are too gullible. Most of us are too gullible, but we are not used to dealing with the sort of manipulation that people can do if we try to call them out. So I have made this mistake of calling people out initially, but then I realized there's no point. They will just be who they are, and I can't reach their level of toxic manipulation. So it's better for me to just stay aside, deal like just be there in that situation, but not let it affect me, and try to improve my knowledge to a level where I gain the confidence and I'm able to get out of the system quickly. Another thing that I think helps is having some sort of vent out. That could be anything. Like for me, it used to be gymming. So in my third year of residency, when I really used to, like, you in pediatrics, it's they don't give you any study leaves really. So you have to be there at work even in your third year before your exams. But if you keep paying attention to all the nagging that they do, you will not be able to study. So I used to like I found an escape mechanism in my gym during my third year of residency. Whenever I would be very angry at work or something bad has happened at work, I would just go to the gym straight after work, gym properly for an hour and a half or so, and then come back home, refreshed for the next day or something. So just find a vent, I think, but find a vent that will help you become stronger and grow as a person.
Yeah, I think that's. I think that the thing that people tend to overlook about toxicity is that, like you said, there's a very spinal response to
Yeah.
show the other person, ki nahi, like I'm bigger than you are, I'm better than you are.
Hmm.
And most of the times, that's just a waste of your time and energy. Yeah, there are of course exceptions where people take it to the extreme, and at that point, you should stand up. But
Hmm.
by and large, if you take up every day, every
Yeah.
single piece of toxic behavior, and you try to write it up, it's just going to come and fight you in the butt.
Yeah.
Um, but how about now? Now that you are in a different country, in a different system, do you face toxicity in any form?
So, like, it depends. I mean, the best thing about again NHS is that it gives you an option to choose your wars. So, if you don't want to be involved in politics, you can stay out of it. Some people just have a habit of being involved in politics because they think that I think people who are not like I don't know how to say it, but people who people just have some people just have a habit of being involved into politics, like buttering their seniors and that sort of mentality that if we butter people, then we'll probably be more successful. So if you want to do that, you can even do that here. But if you are somebody who chooses to stay away from all of it and just do your job and go home, it's very easy for you to do it here. So I would say that I have never personally faced toxicity in the NHS until now. Like you can literally stay away from it. People, I mean, there are people who tell me that especially big centers, big hospitals have some sort of politics and toxicity. But I think most people I met, even my senior colleagues, they told me that if you just do your job, go home, and nobody will care about it. Of course, there might be some people who like to be buttered, but then such people always stay everywhere. I think they're just that's just a kind of behavior that they have. So I think I have never faced toxicity in the NHS, and I'm just glad that I'm in a space where I can choose to stay out of politics, workplace politics altogether.
I think the key thing for you, or like the system in general, is that you have the option, like you said, to stay away from it rather
Yeah.
than being forced to be a part of it, even if you didn't want to,
Yeah, so like you said, being
indulge.
forced is something that used to happen a lot back home. Like back home, if you're not a part of a group, if you're not a part of a clan, then the two opposing clans will just dump you under both of them when they're fighting. So it's like that. So back home, it's too political everywhere. You have to be a part of a group. Otherwise, if you stand out, then you will be crushed.
Yeah. Yeah. So the other thing that I get asked a lot, and I'm sure you have to, is when you move to a different country, especially coming from Southeast Asia, and the brown countries, do you
Mhm.
face any form of racism in any way, at least in the
So,
time that you have spent there?
so it's never evident. Of course,
Okay.
like how I like to put it is that we have racism even in our country.
Yeah.
Even in
Yeah.
our
We do.
country, there is racism. It's not like when you're moving to a British country, you'll face more racism. I think even the north and south of our country are quite racist, to be honest. But it's just like racism here is cannot be very evident because, of course, it'll be called out. Sometimes it's very evident, like when you're going around in trains. I have never personally faced an evident sort of racism, but sometimes people are just like, especially old British men, they're too vocal about it. But then they get called out, and there's huge fights that you see in trains and everything. But I think subtle racism is something which you will realize. I mean, it's not like made evident, but you will realize that there is subtle racism, especially the proper white sort of people. And I have personally just experienced, like, I won't call it evident racism again, but I have realized that maybe this person has a certain bias against me because of the way I look or because of my skin color. And I think that even if you face it, it will be just 1% or 0.5% of the population who will give you that sort of behavior. But the 99% of the population you attend to here, they're all very welcoming. And the best way to deal with the 0.5 to 1% people is to just give them a coffee. That's what I've realized. So I did this particular act and it was very random. So I was just getting coffee for myself. I just asked everybody. And one of them was who was white, and that person was actually, like, I realized, biased against me. Um, he just asked for a coffee, and I got him a coffee, and after that we become friends. So literally, you just have to give them a coffee sometimes, and that's where I realized at that point. But I think racism is too overrated. Many people, just keep asking questions because I don't know who did this, but somebody has overrated racism. That when you move from India to the UK or India to the US, there's lots of racism. I think we have racism even in India that is happening especially in the medical profession, I would say. So we just have to learn to deal with it, but you will be okay, really. I mean, there are too many kind people here for you to ignore one person who's being mean to you. So it's okay.
Yeah, I think the random acts of kindness are really
Yeah, yeah,
really doing
yeah.
doing wonders for you. So that brings us to something happy. What has been the most endearing experience for you so far, being in the UK? What has made you feel happy and bubbly inside?
So I think if you're a good like if you're a good professional, then people acknowledge that a lot more here. I mean, of course, if you are like back home, we are just so used to being called out for doing the wrong thing, and the good things just get ignored. Well, I mean, I never felt like I am a good doctor back home. Every day I was just made to feel, oh, you're you're less of a doctor in this such a particular because of this particular reason. But you're never made to feel that all these years of your hard work, you're going on the right track, or okay, you're doing good, or have led you to somewhere. But every day while working in this system in the NHS, I have realized that somebody or the other will come and tell you, okay, great, good job, or even something like, suppose you are facing a sick patient in the emergency department, and you've done everything for the patient is stabilized. So, we have a debriefing afterwards, and everybody, like, even if you don't have a debriefing, you don't have a time for a debriefing, everybody will just randomly be like, well done, team, we did this, we did that, well done. Well done is so commonly used here. And the kind of motivation that you get after being acknowledged for what you've done is another level. It just keeps you going. I mean, I'm not even talking about the big things like, patients gifting us sweets or consultants praising us in front of the patient. I'm not talking about that, and I've experienced that as well. But just these random little, like, bits of acknowledgement that you get every day when you're working in the NHS is something that I think for me it overlooks the money that I'm getting, honestly. Because this is what I became a doctor for. I became a doctor to change lives. And when I realize I'm doing that by just little acts that I'm doing, it's good. It's good for me to, continue being a doctor.
Yeah, I think even hearing you talk about it feels so nice because, like
Yeah,
you said, when we are here, the kind of patient loads that we face are insane. And despite that, we tend to do, out of 100 things, we do 98 things
yeah,
correctly. And we may miss two things. That
yeah,
too on bad days. On good days, we probably get all the 100 things right. And yet we get penalized for those two things
exactly.
so badly. And sometimes that gets held against you for years,
Exactly.
and there is no concept of acknowledgement. There is no concept of you did a good job. Uh, and I think people here have forgotten how to say, oh,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
you did a good job.
yeah,
Because I feel like that culture is just not non-existent. So it's nice to see that some medical professional somewhere is getting acknowledged.
yeah.
Um, so now, like a professional question for you, and now you've dealt with parents here in India, and their outlook on children. Now you've been dealing with parents in the UK, and their children. Do you feel like there's a lot of difference between the literacy about health generally and also specific to pediatrics?
I don't think there is any difference in the education levels. I mean, we're not talking about literacy rate per se. We're talking about the kind of attendants or the kind of patients that you face. I think, be it in India or be it here, they are sometimes, of course, here you have the NHS portal where they can always go to the Google website and just look at the NHS website for any condition. That's the only difference I would say. But some, like, not hardly, I would say only 40% of the patients here do that before they come to you. So the part about explaining them the nature or the course of the disease or the progress of the treatment or the kind of management that you will be doing, it is the same. The same concept is applied here or back in India, because they are unaware. They're unaware about what's happening to their bodies, what you're giving them, what you're giving to the patient. They're absolutely unaware here as well, and you have to explain them everything, like you have to explain them everything back home. Of course, I would say that sometimes it so happens that back home we don't get time to be that involved in communication and explaining the prognosis. But I would say that understanding levels are pretty much the same for patients here and patients back home. The only thing which is different is, I think back home there's too much politics against doctors. And that is the reason that most patients who visit doctors back home are too aggressive most of the time. They hold a bias against us when they come to us. So it's very difficult for somebody who has a bias against you to make them believe what you're saying is true. That's the only difference. And I would say that even 20 to 30% of patients who I face here have the same bias because of the strikes and everything. And media here is no less, when they're calling out doctors during strike days, they are the same. Media everywhere is the same. But I think, back home we don't have enough time, and it's much worse. Like, the patient population back home is too aggressive, and they have hold too many biases against doctors because of the sort of political environment that we have. So yeah.
No, I think you're right. I think if there is a bias before they even
Mm.
enter your consultation room, it's difficult for you to get through to them,
Yeah,
through that bias. And we don't have enough time to explain the medical aspects of the
yeah,
treatment as it is. So breaking down those walls and then explain the medical aspects is a little difficult to do, especially
yeah.
with the kind of patient loads that we have. So finally, what tips would you give to students who are planning to come to the UK, whether it's for pediatrics or for any other subspecialty?
So I would say that, like I said before, the number one thing for you to move should not be the money, because you will earn a lot more in India. Like, and it will be much easier for you to earn in India and have a convenient life. When you move to the UK, you might earn more in terms of numbers, but the convenience of life here is not the same as back home. So sometimes you will save a lot lesser when you're in the UK. The number one motivation should, however, be like for me, number one was work culture, number two was the academics and the research work that you get exposed to when you're in the NHS. So, a part of the GMC's good medical practice involves like one of the four, 5 points that GMC enlists involves academic work. That's why you get time to do academic work, you get time to get involved in research work. Like it's a part of your work schedule. So that is something we don't get back home. So that was my number two motivation for moving here. So just find the right cause. I mean, don't just move because you are lured by the money or because like
Mm.
you should have the right motivation. And I would say for if you are somebody who comes, I mean, who belongs to sort of a humble family and don't have a lot of funds, it's best for you to actually either work as a junior resident after your internship for 1 to 2 years and save those funds, or finish your MD and have a backup before you move because you don't know whether you'll actually want to stay here forever. What if you want to go back home? So just it's important to have a backup. Apart from that, I think um, you have to again decide sometimes whether you want to take the fellowship route that I took, the sponsorship route. So this is something I would like to clarify here. So when you take the sponsorship route, you have to give a certain fees and enroll into a course sometimes, which I had to do as well. There are two types of sponsorships. One is the MTI fellowship, which is again very competitive, and there are very few number of seats for the MTI fellowship, where you don't have to pay any extra fees or enroll into an extra course. And then there are other sponsorships from other agencies where you have to enroll into a certain sort of a university course, and that is basically to get your GMC and tell them that you are, going to come and sort of study here, and then they will give you your GMC based on that. So again, if you have funds and like I had saved funds, so I could take the route where I had to enroll into a course because they're quite expensive. So just take a call on whether you have the sort of funds to take up a course or you have to just prepare for the MTI fellowship route, which can sometimes take longer because of the competitive rates there,
Mm.
especially after your post graduation back home. And that's it. I think there's when you have to move to a new country, of course, the tips are, I mean, people who have already stayed
Obvious.
out of home, they are definitely more adapted than I was. But yeah,
Mm.
I think just finding the right reasons is important.
Yeah, I think you've done a phenomenal job, and I
Yeah.
think there was definitely I think there's definitely an aspect of luck that plays into it. I have
Yes.
heard horror stories of people going to the UK and they had everything. They had documentation, they had funds, and they still had a terrible time. And I've also heard stories like yours where people, went and they found their stride and they kind of got assimilated into
So
the system.
I would say here I would like to give another tip. I think it's important to choose which hospital you'll be working in. So sometimes people, they just because they have to move, they end up taking jobs in really peripheral areas. You have to remember the sort of bureaucratic system that is there in the UK. It's the same as in India. So India has adapted its bureaucratic nature from the UK actually. So even in the UK medical system, if you're going to very peripheral hospitals and very peripheral trusts, we call them trusts here, like we have universities in India, they have trusts here. So if you're going to a very peripheral trust, then that trust will not be as good in terms of funding as if you go to more central trusts. So choose the right hospital, I would say, because sometimes if you're going to a very peripheral sort of a trust, then because they're not well funded, their HR department is very weak in getting you sorted, I would say. Like even the hospital that I joined at, it's very close to London. However, it's not like it's a district general hospital. So that was again
Hmm.
a sort of a very major change for me because I trained in a tertiary care hospital and now suddenly to move to a district general hospital, which is level two sort of a setup, was a very like um, sort of a downhill trend for me. But yeah,
Downgrading fee. Yeah.
but um, but it was still okay because it is like more in the central area than I've not gone to any peripheral area. I myself know a few people who went up north into some peripheral trusts and their visa and their certificates of sponsorship that you have to get was not sorted in the right time. So they were already, and some of them who were already in the UK, they didn't get a joining date. So they were literally staying in the UK without any funds and they were spending their own out of their own pocket without getting the salary. So
Hmm.
just, I mean, before you take up any opportunity, it's important to sort of just have a look at where that place is and make sure it's
Yeah.
not somewhere in the peripheries. That's my practical tip.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that brings us to the end
Yeah.
of our questions. Did you have any closing comments or anything that you wanted to leave with before we
I think
finish
we
up?
covered pretty much everything, and I think it was really fun being on this podcast. I've been watching you doing these podcasts for a long time now, and it's a really great effort that you bring all of the insights into it, and they're just going out to all our juniors, I would say. I haven't been
Yeah,
very
yeah, I think.
active on my page about all this UK business for like ever since
Mm,
I came moved because it's like even right now I have too many. I was pursuing this course and then I am preparing for my clinical exam now. So it's one thing after another that's happening. But I don't know. I think by the beginning of next year I should be in better stead to start being more involved in all of it. But it was really great to be talking about it on your podcast for the first time.
yeah, I mean, I'm really glad that we got, because I think we have both been on different levels
Yeah,
getting these questions on and off, and it was nice to consolidate all of that and put
yeah,
it in one podcast.
yeah.
So people will have something to look forward to if they
And I
ever
hope
need it.
we keep
So
doing more podcasts. It'll be fun.
yeah, I hope so. I hope
Yeah.
so too. But thank you so much,
Thank you.
Aakanksha, and good luck. Keep doing
Thank
what
you.
you're doing,
Thank
and
you.
we'll see you next time.
See you and all the best for your
Yeah,
for future episodes.
thank you. Thank you. Take care.